Ladies, gentlemen, all those outside and in between, welcome to another episode of RenFare, a podcast dedicated to psychoanalyzing and critiquing media. I am your host, Connor Renfro, one half of From the Margins. Listen until the end for more ways to hear me and support the project. Following the massive success of the first two seasons of Teen Wolf, MTV ordered 24 episodes for the third season, whereas the first two were only 12. Davis didn't really want to write a single arc for 24 episodes, so he took the third season and split it into two halves, 3A and 3B. And because 3A is a self-contained story and it's as long as the first two seasons on its own, I'm also splitting my analysis into two parts. So let's look at the first half of season 3 of Teen Wolf. So what else changed in between the first two seasons and this current one? Well, they introduced a lot more slow-motion dubstep fight sequences. I guess dubstep was really popular in 2013. They just really wanted to play up the whole macho fight angle. The show also gets a lot darker. I suspect that the show's tone was influenced by the contemporaneous success of Game of Thrones. Teen Wolf is getting darker and edgier because Game of Thrones is so popular. The creative team also focuses much more on the history of Beacon Hills, the setting of the show, its lore. I'm not saying that Davis and the writers tried to copy Game of Thrones. I just think that they might have been inspired by the rich storytelling of the other series and wanted to elevate the prestige of their own property by employing similar techniques. As far as lore, I'm quite impressed by how ambitiously Teen Wolf tried to engage in historical storytelling. You'll see a lot of that in this season for sure. On the negative side, I do think that the darker tone undercuts a lot of the camp appeal of the first two seasons. This isn't really meant to be a review though. While I'm here, giving a little author's note before the next chapter, I want to add a little disclaimer. I've had some fun critiquing the setting so far, but these next two episodes, 3A and 3B, are going to deal with gender and race issues a little more prominently. These critiques are meant to examine the text through various frameworks and just see what comes up. I'm not implying that the creative team is problematic or the work they created is bad. I'm a huge fan of Teen Wolf myself.
The base is influenced by the superstructure as much as the base influences the superstructure.
We live in a society that shapes our values and biases that come up in the art we create just as much as the material realities of creating a show for MTV affects the show.
Speaking of material realities, Colton Haynes and Gage Golightly, that's Jackson and Erica, they both left. Jackson moved to London and is just gone from the show, so that redemption arc we were teased is gone. And whatever plans the writers had for Erica, and I do believe they had plans for her, the writers have to work around the absence of the actress. So we're looking at the first half of season 3, known as 3A, through a feminist lens. How does the show deal with its female characters, and what does that say about femininity in the setting? Let's give a little quick recap. Sexism doesn't exist in this setting.
Ostensibly.
As far as the first two seasons, we had three major recurring women. We have Allison Argent, who is the love interest of our main character. She's also a hunter, which puts her in direct opposition to our main character's interests. Part of her struggle was she felt weak and powerless and has an avenue to power through honing her hunting skills, but that does align her with more villainous interests. Then we have Lydia, who is beautiful, smart, and popular, and up until now she's been tied down to her relationship with Jackson. She's constantly being controlled or in need of rescue because she doesn't have supernatural powers of her own, as far as we know. So let's see what happens to her now that Jackson is gone. And then season 2 introduced us to Erica. She was sexy and ferocious and drove the plot with a lot of active choices. Yay. We also had two pretty major female antagonists in the past 2 seasons. We had Kate Argent, Allison's genocidal aunt, who was killed by one of the victims of her war crimes. Then we had Victoria, Allison's dogmatic mother, who killed herself as part of an illustration of the Argent family's harmful ideology. The Argent clan is
Ostensibly
matriarchal. Women are supposed to be the leaders and strategists. Not that we've actually seen that take place. And we also know that female werewolves have a higher pain tolerance than male werewolves. So is there an established feminist theory around werewolves? In the introduction to her 1996 book, Women Who Run with Wolves, Clarissa Estes says the following: "Wolves and women are relational by nature, inquiring, possessed of great endurance and strength. They are deeply intuitive, intensely concerned with their young, their mate, and their pack. They are experienced in adapting to constantly changing circumstances. They are fiercely stalwart and brave, yet both have been hounded, harassed, and falsely imputed to be devouring and devious, overly aggressive, of less value than those who are their detractors." The description of wolves in her quote basically matches the themes and narrative arcs of the entire series. Scott McCall became a wolf in the first season and learned the importance of pack dynamics in the second. This season, he'll learn about the responsibilities of the alpha. Scott's preoccupations are with his mate, Allison, and his pack, Styles, Lydia, and company. The other werewolf, Derek Hale, has a very parental or familial dynamic with his pack. Remember, he's a born wolf. He was not bitten, he was born one. His first pack was his biological family. He lost them all in a fire, and he's trying to replace that. On the note of family, I found an article while doing my research for the queer theory episode, and I found this really interesting tidbit about werewolves replacing women in the birth narrative the same way that Victor Frankenstein does. I can't locate that article now, unfortunately, so...
Sorry, unsourced credit. Just take my word for it.
An alpha werewolf is a mother in the sense that they birth new wolves, and they also serve a parental role in their continued protection and guidance of their pack. So the feminist lens this time will be alpha werewolves are mothers, but we're also looking at how the show treats its female characters. Okay, plot summary time. We're in junior year. Over the summer, Scott has been working on improving himself in order to win back Allison, who dumped him last season. Allison and her father, Chris Argent, have given up werewolf hunting because it's bad. They don't want to be bad. They want to divorce themselves entirely from the supernatural. At the high school, the kids have a new literature teacher. Her name is Jennifer Blake. Every time she enters a scene, the first thing we see is her feet. We see her strut into the classroom in these heels, always strutting, which is weird because she's written to be clumsy and unsure of herself and kind of socially awkward.
Basically a female Styles.
Derek has been searching for Boyd and Erica, who at the end of the second season were seen getting captured by a new threat, the Alpha Pack. This is a pack of 5 alpha werewolves looking for new recruits. Isaac Leahy, one of Derek's new pack members, is rescued from the Alpha Pack by a mysterious girl. Apparently, he had managed to find Boyd and Erica, but he now has amnesia after being attacked. Let's meet our Alpha Pack. First, we have the leader, Deucalion, played by Gideon Emery, whom I adore because he was the voice actor for Balthier in Final Fantasy XII, and Fenris from Dragon Age 2.
I guess Jeff Davis played that game and was like, oh cool, a wolf guy, let's get him on our show.
Deucalion is the alpha of alphas, the apex predator, the demon wolf. They didn't completely get rid of the camp. So Deucalion is blind, but he's still very powerful. His name comes from mythology. the son of Prometheus, a strong military leader, and was also the hero of the Greek mythological flood narrative.
Do you remember Lycaon, the guy who sacrificed his son to Zeus and then was cursed to be a werewolf? Well, that whole incident actually was the straw that broke the camel's back, and Zeus decided he was going to flood the world and end the Bronze Age.
Prometheus told his son, hey, build a giant box and get inside of it with your wife, and then repopulate the world afterward. Next, we have Innes. Not as cool of a name as Deucalion, but he's super strong, I guess. Then we have identical twin brothers, Aiden and Ethan. They're able to merge together into one giant monster.
That's pretty cool.
They were originally the bottom of their pack's chain, but Deucalion must have noticed some kind of inherent power in them and convinced them to kill their alpha and become like joint alphas of their pack. And since the two of them are teenagers, Deucalion enrolls them in Beacon Hills High School to get close to Scott. Aiden starts sleeping with Lydia. She's rebounding after Jackson. She doesn't really want to be tied down in a relationship. She's looking for a distraction.
Because female empowerment always means sexual empowerment. I mean, it's not like inherently bad.
Lydia is also a super genius and really pretty, and she's able to express herself sexually without losing any of her other qualities, so it's not like problematic really.
And then we have Ethan, who starts hooking up with Danny.
You remember Danny Mahialani, the guy who's just like always there.
Ethan ends up joining the cross-country team to be near Danny. Apparently lacrosse is a spring semester sport, so in the fall everybody does cross-country to stay fit. And now this brings us to our only female alpha in the alpha pack. Her name is Kali. She's always barefoot because she has really sharp toenails and she fights by kicking. That's her power. And
Really, what is it with women and feet this season? Did Tarantino co-write 3A?
she's named after Kali, the chief of the Mahavidyas, or the 10 aspects of Adi Parashakti in Hinduism. Wikipedia has a lot to say about the different iterations of Kali, but most notably, in conjunction with how this character is written, Kali is a destroyer of evil forces. She's sometimes seen as the divine mother, or mother of the universe. We're looking for mother allusions here. She is a protector and liberator, and she is often portrayed standing on Shiva.
And is this why the foot thing?
The foot thing. Oh my gosh, I just started and I'm...
And while we're lore dumping, let me go ahead and explain how the Alpha Pack works so I don't have to interrupt the plot summary later. After he got blinded, one of Deucalion's betas decided to kill him for the power. Deucalion killed that beta and realized that when an alpha kills his own beta, he absorbs that power, and this gives him the idea to kill all of his betas to become even more powerful. Then he convinces Kali and Innes, who were alphas of their own packs at the time, to kill their own betas and then join with him so that they can just be like a super powerful gang. And then they later got Ethan and Aiden to do the same thing. And now apparently they want Derek to join them, and they're willing to do it through force. Killing your betas is bad. Alphas are supposed to be mothers. So the alpha pack are basically like killing their own children, which is the cardinal sin for a woman. These alphas are
Bad moms.
Okay, we got the alphas squared away. Let's get back to the plot. Scott and Styles go to a birthday party for Styles' childhood friend Heather. She decides she wants to lose her virginity to Styles, not because she loves him, but because she wants practice for when she does fall in love.
And this is a complicated idea for me, because on one hand, virginity is a myth of purity that's used to evaluate women, and the way that virginity is framed in this scene is something of no consequence, just something to get out of the way. And like, yes, sex positivity. It doesn't have to be a big deal as long as you have two or more consenting adults who know what they're getting out of it. But this Heather girl still conceives of sex as something she has to use to impress her future partners. She wants to be good for them. But I also guess that's an accurate portrayal of teenage neuroticism around sexuality, because really, the utility of this scene is just to let audiences know that Heather and Styles are both virgins.
And before they're able to consummate, Heather gets attacked by a mysterious shadow and goes missing. So then the team gets together to help Isaac recover his lost memory. I don't actually know if Isaac had his memory stolen by the alphas or if it's being repressed by trauma or magic or something. The way they get Isaac's memory back is they hold him under ice cold water until his heartbeat essentially stops and he enters this like limbo trance state. And then they talk to him and guide him through the traumatic, repressed memory Isaac had found Boyd and another female werewolf being kept in an abandoned bank vault.
But where's Erica?
Her actress left the show, that's where she is.
When Derek and Scott break in to save them, Derek recognizes the other female werewolf as his younger sister, Cora, played by Adelaide Kane. Boyd and Cora had been kept from transforming for 3 months. No sunlight or moonlight makes it into the vault, so they weren't able to do their full moon shift for 3 whole months. Scott and Derek had planned to break in and rescue them on the night of a full moon so that they'd be powerful, but the alphas had anticipated this, and it's actually a trap. 3 months of repression just means that these betas had a lot of pent-up energy, and it causes them to go on a rampage once they first feel the moon. They're unable to control themselves, and they almost kill Derek and Scott, but Allison shows up and saves them. The wolves had been contained in a mountain ash circle. Remember, mountain ash is something druids use to create a barrier that the supernatural can't cross. Scott and Derek had actually been trapped inside with the rampaging Boyd and Cora. So thanks to Allison, we've got these bloodthirsty betas on the loose. So Derek, Isaac, and Scott get help from Chris Argent to corral the rampaging betas into a location where they can be kept until the sun comes up. They manage to trap them in the high school's boiler room. I don't know why it always goes back to the high school. The problem is the new teacher, Jennifer, was inside the school at like 4 a.m.
I guess she's really dedicated to her job or something.
So she's in danger, but Derek rushes in and saves her by just letting the betas rip at him until the sun rises.
So I guess it was actually even later than 4 a.m. It was probably like closer to 5 or 6 whenever the sun rises in the fall.
I guess maybe then that means she was just at work absurdly early rather than absurdly late.
Whatever. That same night, Lydia has a little fugue episode and ends up finding a dead boy, and she calls Styles for help. Then Melissa calls Styles to say, hey, your friend Heather showed up in the hospital morgue, and Styles sees that this boy and Heather were both killed the same way. Also, because the dead boy had a purity ring, Styles is able to deduce that they were both virgins, and maybe these are actually sacrifices. Dun dun dun. And then also that same night, Sheriff Stilinski, Styles' dad, discovers a third dead girl who was killed the same way. So this girl, this victim, her name is Emily, and she was about to have sex for the first time with her girlfriend, Caitlin.
So I just want to point out that the show is taking time to equate lesbian sex with heterosexual sex, by which I mean it has the same gravity. It has the same ability to take away virginity. Often, or maybe not so often anymore, intercourse between 2 women isn't considered real sex because of the absence of a penis. Sex is only sex if there's penetration by a sex organ or something. This representation isn't really phenomenal because Emily just dies anyway. But I mean, it is a really subtle note that does a lot to normalize lesbian sexuality and identity.
Derek learns that the Alpha Pack wants him to join them, which means he has to kill all of his betas. So to keep Isaac safe, because Isaac had been living with Derek kicks Isaac out of the loft, and then Isaac moves in with Scott.
Now that I think about it, where does Boyd live? We don't know anything about Boyd. We don't know if he has like a family. Literally, he gets nothing. Justice for Boyd.
And then working together, Styles, Lydia, and Deaton, that's Scott's boss from the animal clinic, Dr. Alan Deaton.
I introduced him in the first episode and then never talked about him again because he was never important to the plot until now.
But working together, the 3 of them figure out that the serial killer is a Darach, an evil druid. Time for some more lore dump.
Druids are kind of hard to talk about because their practice was almost entirely eradicated by the Roman Empire.
But they were kind of like the shamans of ancient Celtic tribes. Sorcerers, wizards, diviners don't really feel comfortable making any specific claims about their religious status or if they held any kind of theology. And the matter is even more sensitive because we have neo-pagan druidism, which does seem to be a religious practice, but that's not what we're talking about when we talk about ancient druids. Most of what we know about them comes from the literature and archaeology and anthropology. But in the Teen Wolf universe, druids are just basically wizards. The most prominent magic used is mountain ash, which forms a barrier against the supernatural. Dr. Deaton is actually a druid. He's the one who taught Styles how to use mountain ash in the 2nd season. I feel like they hinted that Styles was supposed to end up becoming a druid.
Spoiler alert, that never pans out.
Werewolf packs will have a druid that serves as an emissary to the human world. Deaton was the emissary for Talia Hale, Derek's mother.
I don't know why they kept this a mystery until now. I don't know why Derek never recognized Dr. Deaton,
Oh yeah, you're my mom's friend who was always around.
like delivering messages and stuff, or doing like medicinal magic on us.
Deaton also has a sister, Marin Morell. She was introduced last season as the guidance counselor at Beacon Hills High, and she is the emissary for the Alpha Pack. Dun dun dun. So druids use nature as the basis for their magic. Durach means dark oak, so I guess Durach is like a sorcerer. I can't find any scholarship on evil druids, so I think it's safe to say that Jeff Davis invented this class.
But also like Durach,
Or Darach.
it's just like a person's name. It's basically Derek. Derek is just like the anglicized Celtic Durach, I think. I think a lot of fans at the time were actually thinking like,
Oh my god, what if Derek is the Durach?
And the motivation is the Durach is performing human sacrifices to gather power. And in this show, sacrifices happen in threes. You find like groups of people and you sacrifice 3 of them. So the first was virgins. Styles will spend the season figuring out what the other groups are so he can establish the pattern and stop the killings. And the real mystery of this season is who is the Durach, what is their motive, and who's in danger. Skip ahead a bit. The Beacon Hills cross-country team, they're like on a bus heading towards a cross-country meet. This is a really interesting episode that's told anachronistically. So we know that Scott has this wound that an alpha gave him and it's not healing. And we learn that like alpha attacks don't heal as quickly as regular injuries because the magic is different or something. Also, everyone thinks Derek is dead because the night before they had tried to fight the alphas and lost pretty badly. Derek and Ennis ended up falling off some ledge, and when they got down there, both bodies were gone. We find out that Ennis survived the fall, and the Alpha Pack drags him to the animal clinic where they force Deaton to heal him. Deaton is able to do so, but then when everybody else is out of the room, Deucalion crushes Ennis's skull to absorb his power. Dun dun dun. The bus stops to get gas at one point. Allison stitches up Scott's wound, and he actually heals once she does that. Earlier, Lydia had theorized that Scott's wound wouldn't heal because he didn't want it to. She drops the word psychosomatic. We also know that Scott felt responsible for Derek's death. I think it might have been Scott's idea to attack the alphas. My memory isn't really clear. For some reason, Scott just didn't have like a strong will to live. But being treated by Allison makes him want to live again, I guess, so his body heals up. But then the sun goes down and the team has to spend the night at some cursed motel where the visitors are all driven to suicide. All of the werewolves in their group start having hallucinations, kind of like the ones at Lydia's pool party, except instead of your greatest fear, it's like something that drives you to kill yourself. Fun trivia tidbit. This was the first time an episode of Teen Wolf had a viewer discretion warning at the beginning of it because it was so gruesome, I guess. So Isaac re-experiences the trauma of his father's abuse and like has a PTSD episode. Ethan is hooking up with Danny in their hotel room, but then like something starts moving under his skin and he takes like a power saw to cut himself open and get it out.
I don't really know if this is because of his connection to his twin brother and if he secretly resents that, or if he has like internalized werewolf phobia or something. Since he's also the only gay werewolf we've met so far, I don't know if like those can be conflated.
Really, this isn't the psychoanalysis episode, and I don't even care about Ethan, so let's move on to Boyd. Much better. Boyd hears over the radio an audio clip of his younger self in a police interview on the night his sister went missing at an ice skating rink. Last season, we learned that Boyd works at that very same rink. I don't know if he like chose to work at the last place his sister was seen alive as some kind of self-punishment. He blames himself for his sister going missing. He was supposed to be watching her or something.
I, for one, am glad that we're finally getting some backstory on Boyd, and it's like really juicy and makes you think, oh gosh, I can't wait to see what they do with his character.
Styles and Lydia manage to save all of the werewolves, and then they find Scott, who had become really aggressive towards Allison and also just hopeless just saying that he has no reason to live and he's drenched himself in gasoline and he has like a sparkler from the bus that he's going to use to ignite himself. And Styles steps into the puddle and is able to break through the spell, convince Scott that life is still good and worth living, and it's really sweet and tender. Meanwhile, back in Beacon Hills, Derek is alive but severely wounded, and he finds his way to Jennifer, the new English teacher at the school that he saved. She patches him up, and then the two of them have sex, and his wounds magically heal, just like Scott's did earlier. So now we have this pattern of women healing men. Love and connection with a female partner is rejuvenating to the male hero.
I don't really know what to say about it besides it's kind of tropey.
Also, Derek has always been cold and distant to everyone. It's kind of hard to believe he'd immediately fall into bed with this human woman that he saved once.
Not to mention all of his sexual trauma from the past.
Later on, the Darach starts hunting healers and targets Dr. Deaton. Styles tries various divination methods with Lydia because she keeps going into fugue states and finding bodies. He thinks maybe if they can tap into that ability, they can find the people before they're killed. Kali shows up at Derek's loft with Jennifer as a hostage. Oh no! And she challenges him to a fight. Dun, dun, dun. And Derek loses that fight. And then each of the twins takes one of his hands and pushes his claws out. And then Kali just drops Boyd on the claws and kills him. So much for finally getting Boyd's backstory. They literally killed him right after an episode, the only episode where they talk about him as a character. And then they kill him in the very next episode. And then Gage Golightly comes back as a special guest star so they can show these flashback clips of her and Boyd being held prisoner by the Alphas. And the show is like hinting at them being romantically involved or interested in each other. And then it cuts in between the flashback and the present so you can see both of them dying simultaneously. Yeah, I guess that makes it more dramatic if you find out like, oh, they liked each other and now you get to see them both die at the same time, even though they're not actually happening at the same time.
You know, this is that Game of Thrones influence I mentioned earlier. The show just wants to be dark and edgy and have major character death.
Oh, but Boyd wasn't even a major character until they gave him backstory.
So the only reason they characterized him was because they were going to kill him and they wanted it to have a bigger impact.
I'm done. Scott manages to find Dr. Deaton in time and saves him from hanging. Deaton tells Scott he shows signs of being a true alpha, a werewolf who rises to alpha status based on his, and this is a quote from the show, strength of character, by virtue, by sheer force of will. So most alphas get their power from killing the alpha before them. Derek says in the last season that the shape you take reflects who you are inside, which means that deep down, Scott has always been an alpha. He just needs to self-actualize or something. And then Deaton shares that Deucalion is not actually after Derek. He's been after Scott the entire time. Dun dun dun.
I mean, that would explain why they're even attacking Derek in the first place when they should be trying to like entice him into joining them.
So then we have another kind of like flashback frame narrative episode where one half you have Styles and Cora.
Do you remember who Cora even is? She's Derek's little sister who came back this season.
The two of them are talking to Peter, Derek's uncle. And then on the other half you have Scott and Allison listening to Gerard.
Wait, Gerard is still alive?
Yes. He's still alive. He's still dripping black goop after eating mountain ash and getting a bite. Whatever. So Peter is telling Styles and Cora a story about teenage Derek, and Gerard is explaining to Scott and Allison the origins of Deucalion. So this is when we get like a lot of history and lore in the setting of Beacon Hills. So let's talk about the teen Derek story first. The real mechanic being introduced is the werewolf eye color. Scott, Isaac, Erica, and Boyd all had yellow eyes, but Derek and Jackson, in like the 2 seconds we saw him as a werewolf, had blue eyes. When a werewolf kills an innocent person, their eyes turn from gold to icy blue. So in the past, a teenage Derek fell in love with a girl named Paige.
Who looks a lot like Jennifer, so maybe that explains his instant attraction to the teacher.
Peter fills Derek with insecurity about how they're not compatible as long as she's a human, so they devise this plan to have Ennis bite Paige and turn her into a werewolf, but her body rejects the bite, so he takes her to his family root cellar out in the woods and kills her to end her suffering, and that's why his eyes turn blue. Meanwhile, we have Scott and Allison talking to Gerard. The old dude explains the origins of the feud between the hunters and the werewolves. So at the height of conflict between them, before Kate burns down the Hale house, Kali and Ennis and Talia, Derek's mother, were all the alphas of their own respective packs. Oh, and Deucalion. So there were like 4 major packs in Beacon Hills at the time. And Deucalion decides to have a meeting with Gerard in order to make like a peace settlement, but Gerard kills his own men with a spiked club to make it look like they were torn apart by werewolves, and then sticks these like sparklers in Deucalion's eyes to permanently blind him. And this is the inciting incident that sets Deucalion down the path of evil, I guess.
Let's just fast forward to the end.
Lydia discovers that Jennifer Blake is the Durach.
Oh my god, I'm so surprised. I can't believe that the one new character they introduced is the villain of the season. Wow.
Jennifer tries to kill Lydia, but Lydia does like her signature scream. And then we learn that Lydia this entire time has actually been a banshee. Dun dun dun. Banshees are these old Irish mythical women who wail in the night to let families know someone is going to die. In the Teen Wolf world, banshees can predict supernatural deaths. And this explains why Lydia kept going into fugue states and finding dead bodies, specifically the bodies that Jennifer was killing, because Jennifer is a druid and her murders were sacrifices with a supernatural element. Before Jennifer can kill Lydia, Sheriff Stilinski shows up and Jennifer kidnaps him because the final group of sacrifices is guardians. So Scott goes to Ms. Morell, Deaton's sister and the emissary for the Alphas, for some guidance. She tells him that Deucalion's plan all along was either Scott's going to join the Alpha Pack or Deucalion is going to get Scott to kill an innocent person, turn his eyes blue, and forever lock him out of becoming a true alpha, because only yellow-eyed betas can rise to true alpha status. If you get ice blue eyes, it means your soul has been tainted, and you can still become an alpha by killing somebody, but you'll never be a true alpha that way. Derek and Scott manage to capture Jennifer, and they bring her to the hospital.
Why are they there? Oh, right. Derek's sister, Cora. She's been here this season, I'm sure, doing important things. I mean, they wouldn't introduce a character for no reason, right?
I think she was like poisoned by mistletoe, because that's one of the things that druids use to poison people. That has a rich tradition in Norse mythology. I think that's what killed Balder. So they go to the hospital, but then the alphas also show up at the hospital. Jennifer has Derek protect her in exchange for Derek's sister's life. Then we learn that Jennifer is actually Kali's emissary, and that when Kali killed her entire pack in order to become part of the Alpha Pack, she failed to kill Jennifer all the way because she survived, and now she's back. The entire reason Jennifer had been sacrificing people is because she wanted to fight Deucalion. She wanted to end their reign of terror. This episode is kind of cool because it gets the entire cast together in a giant standoff in this hospital. Everybody versus the Alpha Pack. Meanwhile, Styles is in the back of an ambulance with Cora, and she stops breathing, so he has to give her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And he tells her, "The next time I kiss you, you'd better be awake."
Oh no, what is this? A snarky werewolf girl love interest for Styles?
Just when it looks like the team might be able to defeat the Alphas and move on, Jennifer betrays Derek, kidnaps Scott's mom, Melissa, and vanishes. And then the next target on her list of guardians is Allison's dad, Chris, and he hands himself over willingly to keep Allison safe. So poor Styles is having a really hard time with this because he's been spending all season trying to figure out the Durach's MO, outpace Jennifer, figure out the victims in order to save lives, and he has not been able to do that. And now his dad, Allison's dad, and Scott's mom are the next ones on the block. So he just has a full-on panic attack in front of Lydia, and she decides to save him by giving him a big old smooch on the lips. And what do you know? It works. She's able to stop his panic attack by kissing him. So once again, our male hero is healed because of romantic attention from his female love interest. Yeah, Styles has been in love with Lydia since he was in the 3rd grade, and now she's finally kissing him. Yay! Now that they know Lydia is a banshee, Styles and Dr. Deaton are able to tap into her power and figure out where the Durach is keeping everybody's parents. And it's in the Hale root cellar, the same place where Derek Mercy killed Paige. But it's also the location of the Nematon, an ancient tree which is a huge source of magic, and the beacon by which Beacon Hills gets its name. So in the Celtic religion, a Nematon is just a sacred grove or a place to hold rituals. In the Teen Wolf universe, it's just a big magic tree. Druids derive their magic from nature, so like this big magic tree is a big deal. But sometime in the past, it got cut down and lost its power, and it's just been lying dormant. But it could be revived. Back in the loft, Derek heals Cora by using up the last of his alpha power. He's basically giving up being an alpha, that power and that status to preserve his family.
He was never a good alpha anyway.
Symbolically, he's stepping down from the parental matriarchal role to just be a brother. In order to find the location of the Nematon, Scott, Styles, and Allison have to do the same thing they did to Isaac at the beginning of this season. They have to submerge themselves in ice-cold water to get to a place of almost death. But here, it's more dangerous because since the parents are at the Nematon, they face the risk of reviving the tree and activating the beacon again. And also, crossing the veil between life and death permanently darkens your soul. Part of this ritual is when you're pushed down under the ice, it has to be done by somebody close to you because only they'll be able to call you back. So Dr. Deaton is there for Scott. Lydia's about to help Allison, but Deaton tells her to pair up with Styles instead. So that leaves Allison and
Isaac?
Yeah, it turns out that they had been developing some chemistry behind Scott's back. Uh-oh. Long story short, the ritual is a success and they find out where the Nematon is. Jennifer shows up at the Alpha's lair and she kills Kali and mortally wounds the 2 twins. Allison, Isaac, and Styles rescue their parents from the root cellar. And then the lunar eclipse begins.
Yeah, Jennifer's whole plan was strike Deucalion when the moon is completely hidden behind Earth's shadow and he'd be at his weakest. Maybe I should have mentioned that earlier.
So during the lunar eclipse, all the werewolves are powerless, and Jennifer handily defeats Deucalion, but before she can strike the killing blow, Derek is like,
Hey, he's blind. He doesn't actually know what you look like. Maybe...
Oh, right. The reason Kali didn't recognize Jennifer as her former emissary is because Jennifer's face was like super mutilated, so she uses like this glamour to appear like a regular beautiful lady.
And Derek tells her,
Hey, give Deucalion his sight back so he can see how ugly your face is because of what he made Kali do.
And Jennifer's like,
Oh yeah, totes, great idea.
So she heals him, but as we learned with what Derek did for Cora, when you massively heal somebody, when you bring them back from the brink of death, it takes a huge toll. And actually, Jennifer expends all of her power healing Deucalion, so now she's weak again, and the lunar eclipse ends. Oops. So the werewolves are powerful again, and Jennifer's like,
Okay, backup plan. Here's a mountain ash ring. I have a barrier. You can't get to me.
But Scott is able to break through it, and while he's pushing through the barrier, his eyes glow red, and he turns into an alpha. Did you get that? Scott is literally shattering a glass ceiling and then getting promoted to a leadership position. Hashtag girl boss. Scott McCall, feminist icon. What could go wrong? In conclusion, Jennifer is defeated. Deucalion slashes her throat. Later on, Peter will finish her off and she'll be like dead. Scott and Derek let Deucalion go because they know that he used to be good and now they want to see him be redeemed. The twins are also still alive, and later on they'll just become regular students at Beacon Hills High. Happy ending, right? Well, let's look a little closer. So these are the villains we've had so far on the series. Peter, serial killer alpha. He was a victim who became a violent avenger. He's alive with the caveat that he actually was killed but then resurrected. Then we had Kate, who was a genocidal hunter who was killed by one of her victims, basically punished for her crimes. She's dead, as far as we know. Then we have Allison's mom, Victoria, who tried to kill Scott, and then she was punished, and rather than turn into a werewolf, she killed herself. We have Gerard, Allison's grandfather. He's the evil, manipulative patriarch of the Argent clan. He's alive. We have Matt Daler, the creepy photographer guy who got killed by Gerard. We had Jackson, who got possessed by the Kanima, but they saved him. Innes, one of the alphas, was betrayed by his boss. Kali was killed by Jennifer because Kali tried to kill Jennifer first. Aiden and Ethan end up getting redeemed and they're made recurring characters on the show. Jennifer performed sacrifices in order to kill the demon wolf, and she ends up getting punished for her crimes and she's dead. And then we have Deucalion, the aforementioned demon wolf, who is responsible for all the bad things that happened this season. He was directly involved in Innes, Erica's, and Boyd's deaths, and he gets redeemed. He's still alive. He even gets his sight back. And don't get me wrong, I love Gideon Emery. He's voiced some of my favorite video game characters. But there is a major disparity in which villains get killed off and which ones get redeemed. And that disparity is gendered. The two bad guys who did die, Matt and Innes, were killed off by even worse villains. All of the evil ladies who get got, they're being punished. They're being executed because of their crimes. Male villains don't receive punishment. And I mean, yeah, Jennifer killed 12 people this season. I'm not exactly shedding tears over her fate, but originally she was a victim of the Alpha Pack. She was doing what she felt was necessary to defeat them. I mean, it's morally gray, it's complicated. The whole season began by telling us how scary and dangerous Deucalion is. He's the demon wolf. It's his fault that Kali tried to kill Jennifer in the past. And I'm pretty sure between the 5 of them, the whole Alpha Pack, their body count is way above 12. We started this season under the impression that Deucalion was like the big bad, like the worst villain of all villains. And we had a character who compromised her own morals because she thought it was the only way to defeat him and save everybody. I mean, I think that's compelling. I'm not a huge fan of death. I think the series leans in too hard with racking up kills. We're given 2 characters, one who sacrifices in order to amass the power to destroy a worse villain and expresses remorse that she has to do it. Then we have another guy who's just angry because, oh, I wanted peace, but then the hunter guy blinded me, and now I'm just going to become uber powerful and fearsome, and no one's ever going to treat me bad again. And he is the guy who gets redeemed, not the one who sacrificed in order to defeat him. I've got to wrap this up. I'm sorry to end this on such a sour note. Just listen to my disclaimer at the beginning if this rant gave you feelings one way or the other. I'm not mad at Jeff Davis or the creative team. I'm just critically engaging with the text that they created, and it has some unfortunate implications. With the next episode being season 3B, it's only going to get more unfortunate. Thank you for listening to RenFare. I hope you'll join me next time. RenFare is available to listen wherever you find your podcasts. If you like this content and want to hear more, feel free to follow me on Spotify, Anchor.fm, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Radio Free Public, Bullhorn, and several others. RenFare is also uploaded to the From the Margins YouTube channel that I share with my content partner Violet Knight. You can join us there to hear us discuss current events and our own interests. If you feel so inclined, you can join the discussion by becoming a member of our Patreon to support the growing channel. From the Margins with Violet and Connor is also available to stream on the audio platforms I listed above. Please check us out there as well. Until next time.